So we are going to look at cumulative frequency. The examples covered in this video are similar to what you could face in the exam. So typically with these questions, it normally asks you to fill in a cumulative frequency column in a table. Then they will ask you to plot that into a graph. And then you would then use the graph to find the median, lower quartile, upper quartile, and interquartile range. And finally, they'll then ask you a question like this, where it's like, well, what percentage of pupils took more than 50 minutes? So you would then look at the graph and use the graph to answer these type of questions. So the way my videos work, I'm going to do the example on the left, which is I do. You're then going to press pause and have a go at the example on the right. So if I just zoom into this a little bit, so it says complete the cumulative frequency table. So I've already drawn this extra column on for us. Now note in the exam, this may not be drawn on for you and you'll have to draw this on yourself. So in this case, I have drawn this on. So the first one, we're just going to read the frequency as 15. So cumulative, so for the next one, it's going to be 15. So we're looking at this column here. That's going to be 15 plus 27. That gives me 42. Now the next one is going to be the sum of the previous frequencies. So that's going to be 15 plus 27. But now we're also going to add the 22. And that's 64. And then the next one is going to be, again, the exact same thing repeated here. But then we're also going to add the 10 on. So that gives us 74. And then finally, we're going to add 6 on, which gives us 80. Okay. And then the other way you can look at it is essentially to get 42, you're adding the last one with the new frequency. So for example, to get 74, you're adding 64 with 10. Okay, that's another way you can look at it. Now that's that done. I'll tick that off. The second one says draw the cumulative frequency graph. Now what you want to remember here is you are plotting against the endpoints. Okay, so we are plotting this endpoint on this interval against that. So the first plot is going to be 20. So on the graph, you can see delays is on the x-axis. So we are going to plot a delay of 20 because we're plotting against the endpoint against a frequency of 15. So that's going to be that point there. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to plot 20 against 15, like I said. So if I just change color for a second, that's 20 against 15. That's that there. The next one is 30 against 42. So that's that against that. The next one is 40 against 64. The next one is 50 against 74. And then finally we have 60 against 80. And then you're going to draw a line, curved line through this. That's just connecting all the points together smoothly. And there we go. Now in this case, it starts at 0. Okay, so we're going to connect this back to 0. So we're going to take it from 20 and we're going to connect that all the way back to 0. So that is that line now drawn. So we're going to come back up here, tick that off. Now it says find the median, lower quartile, upper quartile, and interquartile range. Okay, so we are going to start off with the median. Now, we know in total there are 80 trains. Okay, so looking at this frequency axis, the y-axis, there's 80 trains altogether, the question told us. So the median is half of the cumulative frequency, so that is going to be 40. Okay, so we're now going to find the median. So I'll write that here. So I'm going to draw a line across from 40. That ends me up there. And then I'm going to draw a line down. And that is going to be 29. Now, note in the exam, you will be given a range. It depends on how you've sort of drawn the curve. So normally the answer will have some sort of range of, an acceptable value between 26 and 32, for example. Okay, so you might not get the exact same value as I am for the questions. Now, to find the lower quartile, now, the lower quartile is a quarter of the total. It's the same as halving and halving again. So if this was the median, the lower quartile is that value there. Okay, so the lower quartile is the same as dividing the total by 4. And then the upper quartile is just adding the lower quartile, which is 20, to the median. So if I just label them on, the upper quartile is there, the lower quartile is there, and the median is there. Now, the way I recommend you do this is first find the median, which you know is a half. So you now have the 40. Then half that again, that gives you the lower quartile. And now you know the lower quartile is 20, so then add 20 to the 40, and that gives you the upper quartile, okay? That's the easiest way to do this. Now for the lower quartile, go across, and come down. That's 22. And then for the upper quartile, go across. So again, straight lined with a ruler. And if we just come down, that's 38. Okay, so in this case, we have that, and finally the question asks for the interquartile range, and the interquartile range is simply the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. So if I do 38 take away 22, I get 16. So if I go back up, I can tick that off as well, and then it says how many trains were delayed by more than 50 minutes. So come back to the graph. Where does it say 50 minutes? Well, it says 50 minutes right there. So how many trains were delayed by more than 50 minutes? So we're going to draw a line up. I'll use a different color. Till there. I'm going to now draw a line across. And that's reading to a value of around 73. Okay, so that is going to be, well, how many trains are there altogether? There's 80 trains. And we know more than 73 is what we read off the graph. So it's this bit here. These were the trains that were delayed. That's in this bit here. So 73 take away 80 gives us 7. And that's how many trains were delayed by more than 50 minutes. Now press pause and have a go at the example on the right. Now you can draw this graph out on a piece of paper. Okay, and that is the only way you can really do this. So draw this graph out on a piece of paper and have a go at this. So with this, I am going to go a little bit quick. So again, with the cumulative frequency, we have the 10. And now we can just do, again, I'll take this route. So 10 plus 25, that gives me 35. And then 35 plus 20, that gives me the 55. And then 55 plus 15, that gives me 70. 70 plus 10 gives me 80. Now I'm just going to check against the question. It doesn't tell me how many students there are actually. So we're just going to go with 80 there. And then it says, draw this on. So we are drawing, again, remember, we are drawing against the endpoints. So that is going to be 20 against 10 for the first one. I'll just use a different color. 30 against 35. 40 against 55. 50 against 70. And 60 against 80. Again, draw a nice line through this one. There won't be a straight line. It'll be more of a curve. Okay, and then where do I connect this? Okay, because this starts at 0, I'm going to connect it back to 0. There we go. That's that done as well. So then it says median, upper quartile, lower quartile, interquartile range. Now remember what I said. So the total is 80. Half of 80 is median. Okay, that's how you get the median. The lower quartile is just a half of the median. So half of 40 is 20. And then the upper quartile is just adding the lower quartile to the median. So that gives me 40 plus 20. Which is that. So that was that quick to do. And then just a case of reading off. Now again, you will get slightly different values to me, depending on how you drew that curve. But like I said, the mark scheme in the exam will have a range. So even though I got 30, you might have gotten something between, I don't know, 30 and 36 maybe. Like I said, there will be a range in the exam, so don't worry too much about this if you didn't get the exact value I'm getting here, because it just depends on how you drew that curve. So going across from 20, reading down, that gives me a 24 there, and then going across from here till there, down, that looks like it's a 43 to me. And then the interquartile range is just going to be the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. So in this case, it's just going to be 43 take away 24, which gives us 19. And then finally, how many people's read more than 40 minutes? So 40 minutes is there. Okay, I just get... Oh, no, that's not what I meant. I need a 10 to do it. No, that's a... So that looks like it is 55 is what it's reading up there. And it's asking for, so that would be out of 80, take away 55. So that gives me 25 there. Again, you might not have the exact same value depending on how you drew that graph, but it should be there or thereabouts. Now, moving on to this next one. Now, sometimes in the exam, you will be given the cumulative frequency, okay? And I noticed one thing that's a bit different with these. They all start at 0, okay? Because they've given us the cumulative frequency. And it won't always be the case. Obviously, in this case, it starts at 20, but I'll come on to that in a second. So if I just look at this, the first one says draw the cumulative frequency graph. I'll just zoom in a bit. So again, remember, we are plotting against the endpoints. So the first one is going to be 5 and 4. The next one is going to be 10 and 11. The next one is 15 and 24. The next one is 20 and 34. The next one is 25 and 38. And the last one is 30 and 40. And again, a nice get through there. And now, since this starts at 0, we connect this back to 0. So that's going to be that down there. Then it says find the median, lower quartile, upper quartile, and interquartile range. So again, in the question, it tells us, it doesn't actually tell us how many plants there are altogether, but we can see that from this number here, there's 40. So half of 40 is the median. So the median is that value there. Half the median is the lower quartile, and then add the lower quartile to the median. So that is the upper quartile. Cross down. So that is, so in this case, you want to read the axis properly. It's not going up in 1. So that's going to be 11, 12, 13, 13.5 is what I'm reading. Now the lower quartile across, and if you come down, so that is going to be around, so just after 9, so 9.5. And then finally the upper quartile. So that reads to me as 16, 17, 18, 18. So then the interquartile range is just going to be the upper quartile, which is 18, take away the lower quartile, which is 9.5. So that gives me 8.5. And then we have what percentage of plants have a height between 15 and 25 centimeters. Okay, so where is 15? That is there. Where is 25? That is there. So let's draw a line up from these two. So from 15, if I draw a line up and across, that gives me a value of 24. And from 25, if I draw a line up and across, that gives me a value of 36, 37, 38. Okay, so we have 38, take away 24, is what I'm reading there. So that's going to be 14. And altogether, we have, it wants a percentage. So altogether, we know there's 40 plants. So we're going to do 14 out of 40, times that by 100. And if I do that, 14 out of 40, times that by 100, I get 35. That's going to be 35% of plants have a height between 15 and 25. So again, press pause and have a go at the example on the right. So again, they have given us the cumulative frequency. They've told us in total there are 40 people, and we need to plot this. So again, plot against the endpoints. So we are plotting 40 and 5. We are then plotting 60 and 25, 80 and 35, so 138, 120 and 40. Cool. And we are drawing a line to connect these together. Now notice with this one, it does not start at 0, it starts at 20. So we need to draw a line that connects back to 20, like that. Okay. Now I've purposely put this example in. And then again, mean, median, and the other stuff as usual. So half of 40 is the median. Half of that is the lower quartile. Add the lower quartile to that is the upper quartile. So that is looking like it's about 52 for 50, about 54.5. The lower quartile, line across, line down. That's going to be 44. Again, you'll have, your values will depend on how you drew this curve. There will be a range given in the exam, and that is about 69. And again, we are now just going to do 69, take away 44, and that gives us the interquartile range as 25. And then finally, what percentage of people took between 80 and 100 minutes? So again, looking at the x-axis, 80 is there, 100 is there. So grab a different colored pen, draw your line up, draw a line across. So that looks to me like it's, the line has gone slightly up, but that is 35. That line's just gone slightly up with this stylus that I'm drawing with. And if I draw that across at 100, that looks to me like it is 38. So that is 38, take away 35, which is 3. Now it's saying what percentage. So that's going to be 3 out of 40 times that by 100. So if I just use my calculator here, 3 out of 40 times that by 100, that gives me 7.5%. So, although those questions that are created were similar to exam questions, here is a real exam question. Feel free to press pause and have a go at this yourself, and then I will go through it. So we have a cumulative frequency diagrams of 60 potatoes. So we know there's a total of 60 potatoes. Use it to find the median. Again, nice and easy. Median is just halfway. So half the total is there. So the median is just going to be a line right across. And then a line straight down. And that's 57. And then it says, Jamil says 80 take away 40 is 80 take away 40 is 40. So the range is 40 grams. So what he's done is he's looked at the x-axis here, and he's saying, well, the lowest point is that one there, the highest point is that one there, and that starts at 80, ends at 40, so then the range must be 40. Now, the reason he is not correct is because, remember the way you plot this? So, for example, if I take this point right here, the table would have looked something like, so if I do weight, like this, right? And we've plotted the endpoint. Now, the lowest weight could have been 30, it could have been 32, it could have been 35, it could have been anything in that range. We don't know the exact weight. And also with this one, remember you plot against the endpoint, so the endpoint here would have been 80, but the minimum point would have been 70. Okay, so we again don't know if that's the correct maximum weight. So the reasoning here would be no, and it would be because, you do need to write this as well, because the minimum, I'm not going to write this all out, minimum weight could be less than 40, and max weight could be less than 80. Okay, show that less than 25% of the potatoes have a weight of greater than 65. So 65 is there, a line up from 65. It's that nicely there, and that looks like it's at 40, that 49, I'd say, so that's 49 there, so that's going to be 60, take away 49, just 11, and then, well, 25%, so if we have 60 altogether, 25% of 60 is 15. And then we can just say that that is true because 11 is what we found, and they're saying less than 25%. 11 is less than 15, so less than 25% have weight greater than 65 grams. So here are 2 practice questions for you to have a go at. Of course, you'll have to draw the graph out on a piece of paper, and then press play for the answers. Here are the answers, mark your work. And that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, check out my other content, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.